I like my lights. They're really cool. I'm glad that they came out this way. I've duct taped them under my kitchen cabinets. Like, here's my sink, and it makes my kitchen super cool. But I didn't really do much at the end of the day. Like, I programmed them to have a cool effect, and then, like, cool. And they just do that. So I thought, let me take it another step further. Let me do something with this single light strip. Now, I like music. Music is great, and I listen to music a lot. So I thought, what if I had the lights react to the music? You know, tons of products do that, but I could make it like my own version, you know?
So my last video was like super long, like 2 sitcom episodes worth of information. So I'll try to summarize this one a little better and just like take you on the journey. So, okay, my idea is to attach a microphone to my LED lights, and the microphone will just listen to whatever's happening in the room, and then the lights will react to that audio. So then I can play music, and I can put the lights by the speakers, and then the lights will react to the music. They will sound-activated lights dancing around. And I would have, like, I'd have the light strip be rainbow. And maybe I could even, I'm really thinking too far ahead, but let's just start with the rainbow. So the rainbow will represent different frequencies in the sound that the microphone is hearing. And so the rainbow will get brighter in whichever color it's currently like hearing. And so I have a great demonstration because I love music and I dabble in music a little bit. Sometimes I DJ as a hobby, and sometimes I make music. So I will use that as an example to show you what I'm talking about in case you are unfamiliar with sound. All right, I got this little thing for some demonstration, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically take the colors and map them to the frequencies. So I'll have all the colors like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, cyan, pink, violet, brown, purple, yellow, green, I don't know, Roy G. Biv. Forgot all the colors. Then what we're going to do is red is the longer of the wavelengths of visible light, and then blue or violet is the higher wavelengths, or frequency, shorter wavelength. Yeah, you get it. So then what we're going to do is red is going to represent the bass, and then blue is going to represent the highs, and then it'll be like a nice little like gradient. So now I'll quickly demonstrate bass, mids, highs on the little DJ thing because that's like a key part of DJing actually. And I just wanted an excuse to play music. All right, so what you're hearing now is just Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. Now, I've got 3 knobs that I'm gonna mess with here. I've got a low filter, a mid filter, and a high filter. And so I can cut out the highs, and it sounds a little different. I can cut out the mids, and now we're only hearing the bass frequencies. So down here, this is what we're going to hopefully have be like red. So if you give it a little listen, it's like boom, boom. There's a delay on my TV speakers, so I'm gonna be like dancing different than the beat on the video. But anyway, it's gonna be like oomps, 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 oomps. The red is gonna pulse a little bit, hopefully. That's my goal. Then, if I kill the lows and go mids, this will be like the middle colors, you know? Like green. I'm like, you know what I mean? I don't know. You see when I pick the highs. That'll be more of just like the hi-hats and stuff. And so hopefully it'll kind of react to it. But I mean, worst case, the lights will at least kind of flash rainbow somewhat on beat. That's kind of the goal too. And I was thinking like I could maybe potentially get the on beat part to be, I could get the flash on beat to like sync with the tempo of whatever song I'm playing on here, but then that's too much effort. What if I just want to play Spotify, for example? And so just getting the room audio would be way easier and like more versatile. not going to lie, syncing up all this audio is a task in itself. I've got this microphone recording on a different computer. I have to sync it with the video audio microphone from the phone microphone. And then I got to make the other laptop microphone get this. Okay, so sound and light. How are we going to combine those? Let's start with sound. So the human ear, I don't know how to draw an ear, but I'm going to try, kind of an ear, right? Let's forget that. We're going to start with a little spectrum of sound. At the very bottom, the lowest frequency is around 20 hertz. So any sound wave that's oscillating 20 times per second, that's the 20 hertz is like what you feel in your bones. You ever go to a concert and you're like, oh, I'm vibrating. Like that's exactly the low end. Then on the highest end, it's about 20 kilohertz, I think. I'm pulling this out of my head. I don't know. But I'll verify that. But 20 kilohertz, that's really high pitch. That's going to be like anything farther than that is going to sound like a dog whistle. You're not going to be able to hear it. Light. So light, there's the rainbow, right? Let me draw a nice rainbow here. Except I don't have a colored pen, but you get it. So the rainbow has Roy G. Biv, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Wait, Roy G. Biv. Yeah, blue, indigo, violet. Now, there's a lot more colors than just that, right? It's a whole spectrum of colors. But the thing is for our LEDs, we'll take in an RGB value, and that value has to be 3 numbers from 0 to 255, indicating how bright each of the red, green, or blue has to be. I kind of cheated. And I've written down here on my draft drawing, I wrote down the values of everything. Red, it would be just full brightness on red, 255.00 for green and blue. Orange is going to be mostly red, a little bit of green. Yellow is going to be full red, full green. Green, full green. Blue, full green. Blue is more like cyan. Indigo is like full blue, but like I was just doing Roy G. Biv, vocabulary. So what we can do is we can kind of just map these 7 values onto our frequency grid, and I'm just completely destroying my rainbow drawing, but you get the picture. And so it would be like, for example, we would have our range of frequencies, and that's going to be like 20 to 150 hertz. This is for audio. That is going to map to the color red. We would have 150 to 400, which you can tell is kind of a larger gap because it's logarithmic. And that's going to go to orange. 400 to 800 is going to be yellow. 800 to 2000 will be green. And this is just a summary video. You get it. Cool beans. So in order to split up an audio signal, right, the microphone is going to just be hearing music or whatever, just from whatever is in the room. And so it'll like get a little waveform, and it's going to look crazy. It's going to look wild. There's an example audio. We're going to use a fast Fourier transform to split this up into these bins of frequencies. I think that's the first thing that came to mind. I'm going to have to research fast Fourier transform because we covered it for like 2 weeks in a class that I took, and it was the fastest paced class I've ever took. It was I'm not gonna lie, I barely learned. But fast Fourier transform is a powerful tool that we can use to break up a complicated waveform into more simple, just sine waves. Sound or like light or anything is all just like a combination of your basic oscillating sine waves, but they're going to be at different amplitudes and different frequencies. I'm kind of rambling here. It's really late at night. I'm tired. I hope I'm making sense with this. I'm just going to do the research for all the parts that I'm going to need off camera. I did that on camera last time, but like whatever. You can just go down the Google rabbit hole, ask ChatGPT, ask people on Stack Overflow, ask people on Reddit, and you'll find stuff. So I'll just kind of cut until I order some microphone parts. Okay, bye. So the microphones came in today. I soldered them up in like 30 seconds. I thought I did really well. My fine motor skills are on point. It was my best work yet. Anyway, no, I don't know. It might be bad and it might disconnect. But I was watching some YouTube videos today, and one of them was kind of unrelated to. I was watching them on the the Fourier transform, just in general, to kind of refresh my memory on that, because we're gonna have to get to that later. But the one video I saw, it was by 3 Blue 1 Brown, and it was a video about the average shadow of a cube. And actually, while I was watching it, I made an origami cube because I was bored. Anyway, sidetrack. But I wasn't bored. I was intrigued by the problem, and I wanted to have my cube and play with it in physical space. It taught me something about not only like problem solving, but myself. And so I wanted to just talk about that really quick. But ultimately, I found that like I've always loved problem solving and figuring stuff out. I've always just like making progress. That's kind of what drives me. And so in this video, it kind of started out with a very complex problem of like a light is shining down on a cube. It casts a shadow. What's the average area of that shadow as the cube rotates around? That's hard. Like, I tried to start drawing out pictures of cubes and then tracing the shadow on what it would be like. And I was like, well, I don't know what the shadow would look like in this spot, and blah, blah, blah. And so it gets really complicated. You can take multiple approaches to solving the problem. The whole idea is to simplify the problem down. And this is what resonated most with me, was simplifying the problem down into baby steps. Just going down to the simplest but non-trivial thing that you can kind of get done. It kind of taught me that, like, in the past, if I hadn't, like, known to break things down like that, I would look at the problem, I would try it for a long time and be like, how do I shape the cube? And then I'd probably give up, because I'd be like, I'm not smart enough to do this. And then I would just, like, say, oh, maybe a computer could do it, because you can just have the computer simulate it and calculate everything for you, or visualize it. But he ended up breaking it down to just a line. Instead of a cube, he was like, let's just do a line, and a line can only rotate so many ways, up and down, basically. And so you start with this very simple, like, you restrict a lot of stuff, and then baby steps. I say that to say that I want to take that approach with this microphone project thing, because I feel if I jump the gun and I just try to get to the end product, it might be discouraging and I might lose my steam. But if you take these baby steps, you can make small progress, because then you simplify it down. You get the problem into something simple, and then you figure out the fundamentals of that, if that makes any sense. So in our example with our microphone, the most non-trivial thing we can do is plug it up and start just graphing the signal. Just see what the microphone signal is doing. Because if we do that, that's probably the most easiest but also important step forward, if that makes sense. You could break it down farther and be like, get the thing out of the box, put the wires on it. But that's trivial, okay, long story short, I got it, and I think it's working. Check this out. Here's our graph right here, and you can see as I talk, it starts to go up and down a little bit, and the mic is down at my on the ground because my computer is down there. But watch, I'm gonna scream into it. So that was good. That was good. We got it working like that. So now we need to really start getting it to be... let me think of what's next. Here's how our setup is looking at the moment. We have our mic, and it is going into the ESP where it will be processed. Now, the mic is basically at a very simple level. There's a little, I think it's called a diaphragm, don't quote me on that one, but it's a little thing, like a plate kind of thing that will vibrate as you speak or whatever noise comes through. So here is my little stick figure. He speaks and it wiggles the little plate back and forth. So that kind of air pressure change will induce a voltage change within the microphone. So the microphone is going to report over some period of time that we'll get into in a second, but the voltage will just fluctuate based on the sound. And so that's like an electrical representation of the sound wave. It will have positive and negative voltage because the little vibrations will go back and forth, so that's okay. What we need to do is process it and do some math on it in the microcontroller. But we can't necessarily take an analog signal and do easy math. So we're going to convert it
into a digital signal using sampling. So, for example, let's say we just have a basic little wave right there that's really badly drawn, and we need to convert it into digital. What we're going to do is, at some interval of time, we're just going to take a sample. So I'm putting a dot and I'm saying, okay, at the start, we grab a sample and we record in a list of like just a list of numbers, like 0 here, what the voltage is at that point. Then we go forward in time a little bit and we take another point, and then we take another point, we grab another point, grab one there, grab one there, grab one down there. You get the idea, and it just kind of goes on for a while. So that might be like 0, and then 1, and then maybe 2.5, and then 4, blah, blah, blah. And so we store a list of those numbers, and then we know the interval in between the time, so we can recreate the wave just by storing a list of numbers. The question is, how fast do we need to chop this signal up in order to have info on what it looked like, right? And so I'll give you a little example. If we have a sine wave like this, and we sample so this is one period, one cycle. Let's say we sample 2 times. We would start at the beginning, and we would start, or our second one would be halfway down the chain. But the 2 numbers there are 0 and 0, so we don't actually know if there was a wave there at all. That's way too few samples to take. So what we can do to get the bare minimum is add 2 more on the peak and the valley, and our digital signal will purely just look like this. But as you can kind of tell, if I traced it out with lines, that would be the minimum amount of samples that we need to say, hey, even though these are straight lines, we can really recreate that as a more curved line, and it would end up looking like that based on the samples that we took. And that matches the analog input, if that makes any sense. So the idea is to get the minimum amount of info to reconstruct your wave, you need at least 2 points, one for the peak, one for the valley, over one cycle. So you need to sample at twice the frequency. It's called the Nyquist theorem. I believe Mr. Nyquist used a lot of complicated math instead of this type of explanation to prove that. And so if our highest frequency is 20,000 hertz, all we have to do is sample 2 times that, so 40 kilohertz. That is how fast we need to sample. We need to chop up our signal 40,000 times every second. A little side note, if you've ever downloaded music, or back in the days when we would buy and own music rather than streaming it, but if you ever did that, they would sometimes say that this audio was sampled 44.1 kilohertz, and that's like the standard sample rate for CDs, for CD quality. And the reason it's 44.1 instead of just 40 is, well, you can go a little faster, you get a little more info, but also the 2 different companies, or maybe 3, they were kind of fighting for the rights to have the technology and stuff. If you're interested in like technology history, definitely look into CD quality and all of the tech involved in that. It's pretty interesting. Also, there is a way to get a better representation of your wave, and that is by sampling a lot. And that can help us go from these straight line, zigzag looking things to a more smooth picture if I have a lot more samples. So as you can see, these samples, as we put them together, it's a more smooth line. So the more samples, the better, basically, in terms of reconstructing your signal into from analog to digital. So yeah, we're trying to do an analog to digital conversion. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to cover. I actually drew this whole picture a few days ago, and then I was editing the video and I didn't like my explanation. So I redrew everything and re-recorded my explanation, and hopefully it was more simple. I don't know, this clip is 8 minutes long, so. Thank you for watching me draw my picture, and I'm sorry if my hand was covering it up half the time. I am a terrible note taker. Okay, I've run into a little roadblock. The ESP32 is a little bit too slow to sample 40,000 times per second, but you can use what's called direct memory access, where you can free up the CPU, basically. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but apparently the software I'm using to program the ESP32 doesn't have the easy capability to do the DMA stuff. And the YouTube video I was watching about it, the guy is using a piece of software that costs $50. So forget that. I'm downsampling to like 20 kilohertz just to see if I can record something with that microphone. And it's really late at night. I'm really tired, so maybe it'll work. We'll see. But I'm kind of sad because like we ran into a speed issue with the ESP in the previous project, this is just I don't want to download a $50 piece of software for one project.
So like I was saying earlier, I really wanted to break down my problem into the most simple but non-trivial step that I could try to figure out. And so once I had everything hooked up, I wanted to still kind of take one step, like a baby step, into making sure everything can communicate with each other and the microphone was actually being able to pick up sound and the LEDs were actually able to, change their color based on that sound. And so what I've done is I've written some code and I'll insert some clips, but I will warn you ahead of time, some of the clips have a lot of flashing in them because of a problem that I figured out later. I'm actually recording this post-production because I totally forgot to explain what I was doing, so here I am. But anyway, so yeah, flashing white warning for some of the clips coming up. Anyway, the first thing I did was I wanted to just set the lights on the LED strip to rainbow. And as you know, there are 60 LEDs. And I just wanted to have a base color that went from red over here to blue, or really magenta, but basically red to blue, with then like green in the middle, and then all the other values of colors in between. And so it was just, the program did it. I didn't even have to do the math like by myself. I just had the program do the math for me. But it's basically where red is 255.00 for the color intensity, and you'll remember that from the last LED project video I put. Green is 0.255. Blue is 0.0255. And so along this path, there's just, we can decrease this, increase this until we get to green, and then we decrease this, increase this until we get to blue. And so along that path, we just divide everything up by 60. That way we have our increments, and then each LED is going to be set to the color plus the previous increment. So that was pretty simple. But then I actually kept the brightness all the way down, so everything was 0. And then the mic signal, there were some really quiet parts and then some really, really loud parts. But ultimately, I just set a threshold where I took all the mic values and absolute valued them, so it looked more like this, where there were no negatives. And then I just set a threshold, and whenever a value got above the threshold, it would light up the LEDs. And then when the full brightness, and well, actually half, full brightness was too bright, it hurt my eyes. As it would drop below that threshold, the lights would turn off. And the mic was really good at picking that up, and it would flash pretty fast if there was a lot of noise going on. However, the actual LED strip was kind of glitching, and the colors were like not consistently rainbow. So I thought something was wrong. I'm gonna give a little spoiler and say that nothing was actually wrong. I was messing something else up unrelated to the code. So I changed the code from this rainbow to just be red.
Check, check, 1, 2, check, check. Oh my gosh. It's reacting so violently. Oh my god. And then, like, this is flashing. I don't know why. Guys, I've been taking some notes, and I found something crazy. So here's what happened. First of all, I needed to know how fast the ESP could sample, because that's kind of the bottleneck here. So I took a bunch of samples in my code, and then I just took the average time in between each sample and printed it out. And I was consistently getting 75.47 microseconds. So that's 75 microsecond gap in between each time we're taking a sample. That's pretty quick, but you convert that to hertz, 1 over a second, for the units, you get 13.25 kilohertz. And I wrote, oh man, because that's bad. We're trying to get to 40, right? So that gives us up to 6.625 kilohertz range for our ESP32, which is not really helpful for anything we're trying to do. So I looked up on YouTube an ESP spectrum analyzer because I was like, maybe someone else has done something similar. And I found a similar thing. The guy had a spectrum analyzer that was going on an LED screen, not like a, you know, a strip of lights. It was like a monitor, but it was powered by an ESP32. His name was Scott Marley. I wrote it down. His was working. His was sampling at 40 kilohertz easy. And he had a very similar setup to me with just a microphone. He didn't have any extra components. I was looking for if he had any other components and like if I needed to buy something else or get a different type of mic or something. So I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know how his is working. Then I just scrolled through the comments and I wrote down his username at JPHDOR. He said, I did the sampling thing and I could only get 14 kilohertz. I am getting about that too, right? 13.25. Me and him, we're on the same page. He's like, that's too slow for me. But then I downgraded the ESP32 to, I didn't write it down, but let me show you. It might be backwards, I'm not gonna lie. I'm using the front-facing camera. But he said you go into your Arduino IDE and you use the version of the board 1.0.4, which the newest version, what I was using, was like 3.0.7. So, I mean, this is a really old version. After downgrading to ESP 1.0.4 on the Arduino, we're getting 11.35 microseconds, which comes out to be 88.105 kilohertz. Over twice what we actually need. So what? I don't know why it works. Even the guy in the comment, JPHDOR on YouTube, he didn't know. He was like, I guess it's something to do with the clock divisions of the older version of the board, but that's crazy. Out of curiosity, I'm gonna try other versions. I'm gonna just go down to 1.0.0 and see if that's even faster. I'm just shocked. So now we can fully sample the full range of human hearing. And then all my notes are just about like the bin width and stuff, but I was doing this based on not the full range of human hearing, so I'll have to redo this, but that's fine. I am shocked that some random YouTube comment has given me a breakthrough like this. Anyway, all right, update over. Okay, update video. I've been working on this for a few days, off and on, and it's kind of been a struggle a little bit, but I have some criteria that I've written down to make things a lot simpler. So here they are. Number one, the sample rate has to be 40 kilohertz. I've already explained this a ton of times. Number two, we need to refresh the LEDs every 100 milliseconds. I chose that number because if we refresh too slow, like half a second, the LEDs are going to lag behind by at least half a second, if not a little more. So 100 milliseconds is probably quick enough that we can easily kind of see it reacting in real time, quote unquote. So in order for us to refresh the LEDs that often, we're going to sample our microphone at 40 kilohertz for 4,000 samples. So that'd be that 100 milliseconds or 0.1 second. And then we will fast Fourier transform that and then immediately go and map it to the LEDs and then do the next cycle of 4,000 samples. Number three, I was going to filter the mic out, but the mic is actually relatively decent and it works fine with a little bit of like background noise because like the room is going to have noise too with the AC or my computer fan, stuff like that. So the mic, instead, we're just going to do a gate where we cut off any values that are 2,000 and below. One thing that I forgot to mention in my drawings earlier is, yes, we care about how often we take samples for our sampling rate, but we also care about how many numbers we're going to assign to the vertical axis, right? So if I sample at this point in time and then I go boop, and I measure it, and I say, okay, there, that dot hits the first tally mark. Well, what is that tally mark? And so what we're using on our project is, on the ESP specifically, is 12-bit resolution. And so 12 bits is just from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. 12 of those bits, which in base 10 is 0 to 4095. And so that is the maximum that we are able to have, that's the number of tally marks that we have, basically. So it'll go from negative 2000-ish to positive 2000-ish for that 4095 total marks, right? You can go higher, like some CDs will say, like I said, 44.1 kilohertz, 24-bit. And so that 24-bit is your depth here. So they're using twice as many numbers for these. And so they get a finer resolution and they don't have to round as much. But 12 bits is a lot, and that will be plenty for our project. That way it'll pick up loud stuff that it's not going to pick up quiet stuff, because we don't really want the LEDs flashing to quiet stuff anyway. Second thing is that we are going to need 60 bins for our Fourier transform, because we're going to map the magnitude of each bin to each LED. And what I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to color the LEDs as like a base color, and then just use the magnitude of the Fourier transform to change the brightness of the LEDs, so that way they will be dark when it's not hearing anything, and then hopefully full brightness when it's really loud. And then the bottom end will be the lower frequencies, and the top end will be the high frequencies. I'm using the Arduino FFT library and the Arduino IDE because I did the speed test with it, and it works great, thanks to the YouTube comment. Okay, these criteria are unfortunately impossible. It's because the Fast Fourier transform library does not work with the old version of the ESP board, which is the whole thing that caused us to sample at 40 kilohertz. So instead, I just had to bite the bullet and update the board, and it worked fine with the Fast Fourier transform library. I kind of got frustrated because it was, well, really quickly, let me go ahead and show you. I got the serial plotter plotting the Fast Fourier transform output, so we're getting some really good results here. It's really spazzing out because it's just constantly sampling, and the plotter isn't really, but you get the picture. And that's going to be mapped to our LEDs, which is nice. In fact, it does that now. I just have the LEDs turned off because they're annoying, and I have to, the colors are a little glitchy for some reason. You can see that as I talk, the LEDs kind of brighten whenever I talk, and it's brightening based on the Fast Fourier transform of the mic signal. Yeah, it's laggy as heck bad because we are on the new version of the board and it can't sample at 40 kilohertz, and so it's just lagging. And now I don't know how far behind those LEDs actually are, which sucks. Yeah, that's kind of the update that we've got. So we've made a little bit of progress. In fact, a little bit. No, we went from like the LEDs spazzing out to actually something useful, sort of. It's kind of cool, but it's a struggle. So I don't know if I'm gonna cut the sample rate down and just not represent the whole human hearing. I actually tried to program the discrete Fourier transform, except you have to do 4,000 for 4,000 samples. You have to do 4,000 times 4,000 operations, which is a lot, and the ESP processor technically should have been able to handle it, but I think that when you're trying to update the LEDs, it causes lag. So the DFT was even laggier than the FFT, which is absolutely to be expected. But oh my gosh, it's a struggle. And on all of this, I still was like, I don't really understand what the Fast Fourier or what the Fourier transform is doing. So I started working one out by hand based on data I got from the mic, which is a bad idea. So I like scrapped it and just made up my own fake data, and then I'm doing it by hand for fun. But it's like, well, whatever. It's just math problems over and over again. Yeah, that's kind of an update. So I'm just gonna, I don't know, debug it a little bit. I was gonna go to the gym, but then I was like, no, I want my lights to light up. So here I am on a Friday night at 7 o'clock, playing with LEDs. This is so difficult, man, but it'll happen. We're making good progress. All right, that's my update. In the next clip, I'll probably have some like success. Who knows? Okay, we got some good news and we got some bad news. The good news is it works exactly how I designed it.
So I forgot to explain this. I'm just going to add this clip as I edit the video right now. But for some reason, I was able to use the most updated version of the ESP board and the fast Fourier transform library without lag. The bottleneck was supposedly the LEDs. They were updating every 100 milliseconds, and that was just too slow. I ended up taking it down to just 1 millisecond, and it was really responsive, like very, very quick. Although whenever I was testing the actual max sample rate, I wasn't involving the LEDs, so I'm not sure. I don't know, maybe it's not sampling at 40 kilohertz, but it looks like it is. So the lights turn on, yay. That's like what I went with, and it looks cool. But anyway, proceeding to the video now. The bad news is it flashes like crazy. So I've got a test clip that I'll show, but fair warning, there's a lot of flashing lights, and I'm just playing some music on Spotify on my phone that I'm also recording with, so the audio's awful, but here it is. Yeah, the flashing, I was at first like, it hurts my eyes. I don't have epilepsy or anything, but if I did have epilepsy, this would be terrible. Like, don't show that to somebody that's got a condition like that. So I needed to get a fade going to make it more gentle on the eyes. Like fade in and fade out to the brightness. But that doesn't work, because then that starts slowing it down. We have to have it updating super duper fast. I think that this would be better if I had a bunch of LED strips, or like, I don't know, a screen, and then could display it on a screen in terms of like a 2D graph. This is more of a one-dimensional like line of LEDs. And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know what? I could just scrap the fast Fourier transform and make it a volume meter, you know? Just have the LEDs set to rainbow, but turn them off. And then as the volume gets louder, they'll start brightening up from the bottom up. That could probably be a fun little thing to do, I guess. But that might also flash really fast if we're trying to get this, real-time thing going on. And it would put all of my research on the Fourier transform in discrete time and my analog to digital conversion refreshing YouTube videos. It would put all that time to waste, which is fine. I learned a lot. It was great. And it was refreshing my memory on this type of processing. But at this point, yeah, like I might just do a volume meter and see if I can get it to smooth out over time. But it's like the volume of the room can just change so drastically too. And so it's probably going to flash. And I think that's just how it's going to be. So I don't know. I'll keep playing around. Maybe I'll find something. I think I'm going to scrap taking that microphone and putting it in the frequency domain. I don't think that that's going to work anymore. Trying to think of what to do. Anyway, well, yeah, so the next clip will be whatever I decide to do. Okay, update number 80 billion. I've recorded so many of these, it's ridiculous. But I've discovered something on accident. I'm going to insert a clip of the LEDs spazzing out and glitching, so it's a little bit of flashing lights there. But there's some LEDs that are flashing up towards the top for no reason, and then the bottom ones aren't stable. I figured out that this is just because I was powering my ESP with the USB, and that's just not enough power to get the ESP to send a clean data signal to the LEDs. So I just went back to what I was doing when I had the LEDs under my cabinet, and I just plugged in the ESP to the same power source as the LEDs, and then I had a nice, smooth, and proper 5-volt, power into the ESP, and that worked very well, and then it stabilized everything out. The Fourier transform program was still very flashy, but it was flashy because it was reacting to my voice as we've programmed it, or reacting to the microphone, that is. And so now I'm actually doing some research and switching it into a volume meter that will just react to, just the peak of the microphone. Not necessarily the actual, level of the microphone, but it'll basically... I did some research on how peak meters work on your computer, or when you're editing video or recording audio. There's that green bar that fluctuates, but it'll go up to the peak and then it will glide down in a quarter or a half of a second to the to the next highest peak. And so as you get more peaks, it'll jump up, but then it'll glide down. So it'll fluctuate kind of smooth, at least more smooth than what I had before. So I'm just programming that into the LEDs, and then I'm going to have it as a rainbow, and then hopefully it'll just react to the volume of the microphone. So we'll see what happens. Lo and behold, the volume meter LEDs. It works very well. It does what it's supposed to. It looks super cool, and it's very reactive. You can set this up like I have it or something. You can put some music on and have it bounce to the music or something. It's great. Maybe don't do it while you're watching a TV show or a movie. It could get pretty annoying, I'm not going to lie. But, I mean, that's it. Now I'm like, okay, what next? It's more of the journey, not the destination, But it's done. Project over. It's very simple, too. It's like that's all it does, But it was a long journey of a lot of problem solving. That's what I like. I like solving problems. I like to be like, oh, this is happening, and I know how it's happening because I had to fix all the problems along the way. Actually, to be honest, to be transparent here, I don't understand fully the decay part. I was researching how audio meters do their thing. This is a peak meter, and so as a peak comes into the microphone, maybe it's like right here, it will then decay, but it has to decay proportional to the actual peak level. And then it just has to turn off the LEDs one by one really, really quickly. But you have to adjust how fast they turn off based on the level. Because if you're all the way up here and then it starts decaying really slow, then it won't look as good. It won't be as reactive, if that makes any sense. There's parameters that you can adjust in the code for sensitivity, because it's going to filter the mic out for some noise and get a bass like gate level. But honestly, I'm using I think it's 2,000 out of about 4,000. So it works really well on that sensitivity level. The mic itself has a screw that you can adjust to change the potentiometer on there to raise or lower the gain on the mic, but it's a tiny screw. I don't have a screwdriver that size, so I'm just going to leave it and then adjust it in the code. But it works very well. Yay! I'm just going to play some music on it and do a little demo video. But that's it. We're done. Thanks for tuning into this. I hope it was entertaining. I'm really just doing this as I could just write up a document about my projects, but I like filming videos better, and I can just I don't have to be formal with it. I can just be informal and put a dancing video at the end or something. And it's with a document, it's more like you'd have to be formal. You'd have to be all corporate with it. No. But yeah, I like it a lot. I don't know what else to say besides, it really is about the journey, not the destination, because now it's just like a thing that's there, and I don't know what else to do with my time. Nah, I'll come up with a different project in a little while and start paying a lot of money for parts for that. Yeah, I don't remember how much I've spent exactly on this project. The LEDs were, I think, $15, $16. Round up to 20. The ESP was $8 or $9, but I got a pack of 5 of them, so it was more $30, $40 for all those. Math. If they were $8 a piece and I got 5, I got 4 ESP, whatever, it doesn't matter. The power supply was pretty expensive, kinda. I already had all the jumper wires and the breadboard and my soldering iron, but if you want to factor all that in, it's now up to $400, because the soldering iron is expensive. Oh shoot, what did I do? I bumped a wire. My house is a mess. There's wires all over the place. There's papers all over the place with notes. I'm like a mad, crazy scientist, except this isn't really... I don't know if this is that impressive at the end of the day. I like it. I think it's cool, but it's not anything that. No, it's not something nobody's ever done before, All right. I guess I'm rambling too much again. Thanks again for tuning in to all this, and enjoy some random music and the lights.
Soy perfecto, solo sé que yo te quiero así. You on my face, that you only hold me when I'm on my knees. Baby, can you pull me in closer? You hurt. What did I say in my head? I met her on my way to Chicago. I never would have thought she was living like that. Her words seemed so sincere. When I held her near, she would tell me how she feels. It felt so real to me.
You know what's pretty interesting is it kind of seems to react a lot better to like drums, not necessarily like very transient noises that like have a spike in the audio, you know, rather than like singing where the audio might be more the same level because it's a peak meter, right? It's adjusting to the peaks, if that makes any sense.